levy stops you from paying your taxes. What happens when the IRS levy stops you from being able to pay your current taxes? Does that mean that you're going to end up in this vicious cycle, the cycle that we refer to as the cycle of destruction, where you add additional delinquencies from the current period onto all the delinquencies that you already had? Imagine the horror of having to go through that experience. Now, if the IRS levy puts you in a position where you cannot pay the taxes that are due from you now, that levy has to be removed. That's just basically what the law requires, because you have a right and an obligation to get into tax compliance at this time. I know by now you may think that that's an harangue. Tax payment compliance and tax return filing compliance, and you're getting into it and staying in it, is the first step to solving any kind of IRS problem that you have. In other words, I refer to it as surfacing. Once you surface, you have to learn how to tread water. Once you tread water, then you can learn how to swim. And once you swim, you can swim to shore and climb out and just live your normal life. That's the whole sequence of events that happens when somebody's burdened underneath the previous delinquency and where the IRS starts enforced collection, meaning levies. Levies. Okay? In our factual situation, we have a situation where the gal is completely debilitated by the levy. And she has things that are positive that are happening in her personal and business life that are going to move her forward so that she can get not just back on her feet, but get into a productive state. Suzanne knows that this is her big opportunity. And yet the IRS levy is just a terrible introduction and upsetting experience. It's just terrible. But she has to get in tax payment compliance. And in doing so, she's going to be able to make her first step toward correcting the things that are delinquent from her past. So, she's going to ask for relief from that levy. Specifically, she's going to ask that the IRS release the levy. And she's going to do that by filing her 433 financial disclosure. And in that financial disclosure, she's going to have the basics of what her expenses are and what other income she has and when she expects it. But she's going to also provide the details of what it is that's happening with her opportunities here. Yeah, she's embarrassed. Yes, she's panic-stricken. Yes. And she's very much negative about the fact that this news may get around. And she's very negative on the adverse ramifications, meaning the consequences of what could happen to her or against her if that news does get around. Forever ruined? Yeah, that happens to some business relations when this news does get around. But by asking the IRS to remove this levy based on the things of which we are aware and which can easily be disclosed to the IRS, she's going to be entitled to the release of that levy. And she's at the very least going to be entitled to a temporary hold on collections. Now, if the IRS doesn't want to pay attention to her, or if there's resistance that is negative, she can immediately request an appeal. She can ask for appeals to consider the facts that she's presenting. Because quite frankly, these facts are compelling. And she'll be able to work through this with appeals, because appeals are trained to resolve tax problems so that the taxpayer can become productive. When you become productive again, the government wins, because the government is your silent partner in all the things that you produce from this day forward. Once you become a tax-paying citizen again and you remain in compliance, the government is further ahead than by trying to collect an old delinquency on you. That's why all of this is really not an antagonistic experience, even though many people in the IRS consider it that, because they think that they're just completely tied to collecting from people that don't want to pay. And there's also, quite frankly, taxpayers that believe the same thing. But the reality is that the law is imposed in a way that governs the protections that taxpayers you are entitled to, and that limit the collection reach, the force, the threats that can be imposed by the IRS. Because in the long run, Congress has already determined that the country, all of us, are better off when we're working together, recognizing that taxes are part of life and that they can be paid voluntarily, normally in the course of your business, which is what compliance is, normally in the course of your personal life, which is what compliance is. So we make ourselves available for your consultation with us, and we'll help you make a presentation that is as compelling as your circumstances can allow. And we'll help you with completing the paperwork that is needed too, so that you can get your life back. Thank you.